As always, the band would like to show their appreciation to our veterans who have served our country, those who have laid down their lives on the lines, and those currently serving, as we play this majestic arrangement of a salute to freedom. And when you are a veteran, please stand and be recognized. Thank you, veterans. Let's give them another big round of applause. Thank you for your service. We wish to thank once more the Old Precious Board for the invitation to perform for you again this year, and to thank our administration for providing us release time from school for us to be here. Please rise. Gentlemen, remove your hats as we close with our national anthem.
Engineers, attention, all engineers. It is 12 o'clock noon. Time for those noon whistles. Let's hear your whistles, engineers. And there you have it, the 2013 Tiger Marching Band.
the young men you see in the black jerseys will be playing football tonight, and we wish them well. Thank you. We hope to see you again next year.
Welcome, welcome. Horses, come on down. I'm Paul Bishop, and I'm going to tell you what the horses are, which end the food goes in, and what comes out the rear end. First team we've got today is a team of Percherons. They're owned by Dan and Jackie Wistrom. Dan is the director of the horse area. He's pulling one of our wagons that's here on the grounds all the time. This is Dan and Jackie Wistrom with a pair of Percheron horses. Thank you, Dan. Can't hardly see you for the smoke. Dust, sorry. This next rig is being pulled by an American draft. This is Terry Moore. And my wife, Teresa, sitting with him in the back. We've got Jonathan. And who we got there? A friend. Here we've got Todd Moore, and he's got a team of painted draft horses, and his wife, Jenny's riding with him. Some friends in the back. Oh, and there's little Taylor. We've got an old Thresher's wagon there that they're pulling. This is Jody Welch. She's got a team of Morgans. Morgan horse could do everything as a dual-purpose breed. That's a breed that originated in America. Here we got a team of Belgians with Gary Shirk driving and Mrs. Judy Penton riding in the chair. Somebody in the back's ducked down there. This is one of our... These are Belgian horses. These folks have been coming a long time. This is Ed Minert with another team of Morgans. You'll see Ed once in a while out here with this buggy that goes all over. He is wearing the official dress today of bib overalls. We appreciate that, Ed. We have Larry and Carol Robison. This is a team of Suffolk Punch. Now that wagon right there, I know he built just to pick up square bales. You bail him on the ground and down low he could drive and pick it up. He's just like a machine, I tell you. This is Brandon Harp with a team of Halflingers. The Halflingers is our featured breed this year. They're a dual-purpose breed, ride and drive. They're drafty and they'll pull. This is a Undernear team here, and they're pulling the manure spreader. And then you got Joe Miller on the shovel. We thank you for letting us come through, and this is our part of the parade. We're going to turn it over to the Cowboys. You bet.
with Joe Miller. I see you haven't improved any since yesterday. I see you doing the same thing yesterday. So, have you got a contract for tomorrow too? Okay.
Yeah, you have to start somewhere, you know.
All right, soon as the cars and tractors, steam engines, and them get lined up here, why, we'll be ready to go.
DC made it.
Oh, DC.
I don't know how.
How many did you have? Parade yesterday?
I don't know.
Seemed like you had quite a few of them.
Some of them didn't go yesterday. Like there's more going than the one guy. We got him fixed over there. The other guy ran out of water, and he's got another one today. So.
We got several cars coming through. We're going to alternate them with the tractors. By no means do we have them all out today. They're pretty hot, and some of them do get hot under the car. First car through is Marvin Johansson, and this is a Model T. This would happen to be a 1923. Next one through is a 30 Model A Ford from the Terpstra family out of Holland, Michigan.
This next tractor is a 1935 Huber HK. It is a feature tractor for 2013. It is owned by Ann Pelley of Wheatland, Iowa. It was built in 1935 to 1943 with only 447 tractors made. And right behind it is Towmater, also made by Chuck Pelley.
1918 Ford T by Lloyd and Laura Bank of Salem, Iowa.
This next car up here is the 1935 tractor, is the 1935 Huber, owned by Dick Buckwald of Dixon, Iowa, and Dick is the operator.
Bill Hudson out of Walcott, Iowa, and his 1937 Hudson Terplane. 1930 Model A delivery truck out of the Sater family in Mount Pleasant, driven by Gene Bowerbank. Here's a 1915 Model T. This one's out of Knoxville, Iowa. It's a Darrell Jordan family.
1930 Huber, 3245, owned and operated by John Hill of St. Charles, Iowa.
1929 Model A, Ron and Lorraine Herring from Winchester, Kansas.
1947 B.F. Avery, Model A, owned by Dennis Turpinning from Kirkwood, Illinois, and Dennis is the operator.
This is a 1910 Sears, Danny Peterson out of Olds, Iowa. I got it. Here's a 43 Crosley Mosquito, Shirley and Paul Garlow out of Burlington, Iowa.
1948 Leader Model B, owned and operated by Don and Kathy Jones of Keokuk, Iowa.
This next one's a 1925 Model T pickup truck out of Good Hope, Illinois.
This next Model K Wallace coming up here is the 1919, owned by your director from Tractor Area, Alan Bucket of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and driven by his son, Austin Bucket, and assisted by his mother, Lori.
1935 Auburn Supercharged Speedster. It's from Walcott, Iowa.
1951 Ward's HG, owned and operated by Robert Swanberg of Pearl, Iowa.
Here's a 1952 Phyllis and Paul Girls from Danville. This is a Crosley Super Sport.
1911 Hyder Model A, owned by Marvin Stoker from Tama, Iowa, and Marvin is the operator.
1958 Chevy Biscayne, Roger Graber out of Mount Pleasant. Here's the 27 Model T from Kurt Solon, Iowa. Got the air conditioner on? Here's a 1911 out of Troy, Missouri, Harry and Alice Daw. 23 Model T Coupe from Janet and Bob Hessler, Danville.
1913 Hyder Model B, owned by Marvin Stoker from Tama, Iowa.
Here's a 1940 Chevrolet 85 horsepower Jim Flinspaw from Fairfield.
1945 Friday Tractor, an Orchard, owned by Alan Burden from Newland, Iowa, and Alan is the operator.
Here's a 17 Ford Speedster from Blake Smith from Mediapolis, Iowa.
22 next. 21, that's just another, that's a love tractor, but I don't.
Here's a 1925 Model T race car. It was state champion in Illinois in what year? In 1938.
No information on the next tractor. It's a Love tractor, made by the Love Company.
1951 Studebaker from the Greenhurst Farms, the Graber family here in Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
1938 Eagle tractor, owned by Lauren Schutt from Wheatland, Iowa, and Lauren is the operator.
Gary Van Dorn in a 57 Chevrolet four-door hardtop out of Mount Pleasant.
1950 Gibson Model D, owned and operated by Tom Beezer of Letts, Iowa.
1928 Ford Model A, Harold and Rosemary Jacobs out of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. This was the very first year for Model A.
This 1950 Toro truck, owned by Ken and Marlene Perkins from Bennett, Iowa, and Ken is the operator.
1931 Ford Model A, Terry and Susan Rue out of Iowa City, Iowa.
1935 Farmall F-20, owned and operated by Carl McNamee of Delmer, Iowa, with an Ottawa drag saw.
Here's a Dodge 1917 from Jim Selledy family out of New London, Iowa.
1947 BF-80 Model A, owned by Vivian Sparks from Wheeling, Missouri, and Donald Sparks is the operator.
Gary Seib out of Donaldson, Iowa, in his 1913 Buick right-hand drive.
1951 Ford 8N, owned and operated by Paul Martin of Marion, Iowa, with a one-row David Bradley corn picker sold by Sears and Roebuck.
There's a 29 Model A Ford by Harold and Bev Rebling out of Fairfield, Iowa, and he has a Sweet 16 with him.
40.
Here's one from the Major Watkins family. That's a 1930 out of Yarmouth, Iowa.
The 1922 Altman Taylor, the largest ones, owned by the Midwest Old Thrashers, Mount Pleasant, and Ronnie Magnus from Good Hope, Illinois, operating with John's at the wheel, too.
Right here is a 1926 Model T Touring driven by Major Watkins from Yarmouth, Iowa. He's 97. He has never missed an Old Thrasher. Thanks, Major.
This is a Neighbory 2550, owned and operated by Marvin Stokel of Tama, Iowa.
1931 Model A, Mike Minert from Walford, Iowa.
A 1917 Ford Model T conversion, owned by Dick and Alice Grimm of Riverside, Iowa, and Alice is the operator.
1929 Model A, Bill Brickey family out of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
51.
1923 Ford T conversion, owned by Dean Yoder of Iowa City, Iowa. Dick Grimm is the operator.
Here's a Izetta, 1957 Izetta from Washington, Iowa, Owen White.
1923 Ford T conversion kit again, owned by Dean Yoder of Iowa City, and Dick Grimm is the operator.
Bob Gertis family from Burlington, Iowa, 1909 Stanley Steamer.
1960 Oliver 880 Standard, owned and operated by Frederick Hayter of Lawrence, New York.
Next one up is a Chevrolet 1929 from the Thorpe family out of Albia, Iowa.
1971 Murray Hill, owned by Philip Smith from Lawton, New York, and Philip is the operator, made in England.
21 Model T truck by the Steve Heisey family, Mount Pleasant. Thank you. Good man.
1958 Deutz 8005, owned and operated by John Hare of Eden, New York.
27 Model T truck from Brent Gwynn out of Taylor Ridge, Illinois.
1947 Dodge Power Wagon, owned by Clint Dixon of Redlands, Illinois. Clint is the operator.
Here's a Model T, 1918 by Dennis Walker out of Burlington. He's our club president this year.
Thank you. 67 and 66.
AC, owned and operated by Don Matthews of Danville, Iowa, with a Vermeer power seater. Only one of 10 made from Danville, Iowa.
Here's a 1920 Model T Ford on Daly from Middleton, Illinois. It's a center door Model T. That's why they call it a center door.
1959 International Harvester 560 diesel, owned by John Scott, west of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Deanne Scott's the operator.
Here's a 1922 Ford Model T pickup, four-wheel drive from the Ron Carver family, Mount Pleasant, with a Sweet 16, Whitney Barton, Mount Pleasant.
1939 Custom, one-half John Deere, one-half Farmall, owned and operated by Gary Coggener of Collins, Iowa.
What?
Okay, a 1967 Dodge Straight Truck, George Genetech from Washington, Iowa.
1948 Ford Alien, owned by Red Green from Richland, Iowa, and Red's the operator.
We got a 23 Nash from Brad Casey out of Iowa City, Iowa. The old moonshine runner was Miss Violet from the Long Branch.
1929 Rumley Oil Pull 4060, owned by Daniel Peterson of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
Here's a 1930 Model A Roadster from the Lichty family with Hattie Lichty, Mount Pleasant, Sweet 16.
1923 Rumley Oil Pull, owned by Teddy and Danny Buckert and Larry Holmes of Cavalcade, Missouri. Danny Buckert is driving.
Okay. Thank you. Talk to you later.
1923 Rumley Oil Pool Model 2040, owned by Dan and Ken Buckert of Warsaw, Illinois, and Jeremy is the operator.
Okay. 120 is the next one.
The first steam engine is a 1978 half-scale 65 horsepower case, owned by Dale Bohr of Toddville, operated by Dale, and restored by the Bohr family.
1931 Rumley 6, owned by Merlin and Joyce Schaff, Idaho, Iowa. Merlin is driving to Model 6.
1983 half-scale advanced Rumley, owned by Lester Butterfield of Toddville, operated by Kevin, restored by Kevin and Lester.
1953 ACWD, owned and operated by Robert Blue of Canton, Illinois.
122.
1918 Lumley Oil Pole 1638, owned by Rogenville from Missouri and operated by Leland Harvey.
This is a half-scale 16 double central reeves, owned by Ben and Larry Pittman of Carlinville, Illinois, operated by Ben, built by Lawrence Beaumont.
1919 Twin City 1220, owned and operated by Mike Swanberg of Des Moines, Iowa.
This engine is a 2/5 scale freelance steam engine. It's approximately, and then he's got a 3rd scale case separator behind. It was built between 2002, 2006, owned by Mike Nichols and Wayne Kennedy, and it is operated by Mike.
With 1925 Twin City on this side, 2744 model, owned by Mike Swansberg from Des Moines, Iowa, and Corey Jackson, the operator.
This is a half-scale model 65 case built in 1982 by Gerald and Dan Carruthers, and is owned by the Carruthers family of Lenox, Iowa, operated by Riker. This is a 1915 65 horsepower case owned by Al and Melinda Hussinger of Mount Pleasant, operated by Aaron Williamson and Ryan Lemson, and they were here from Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. Ryan, Gretchen, Kaylee, and Blake.
Next one is a 1932 Monarch 50 crawler, owned and operated by Robert Leffler of Beach Bottom, Pennsylvania.
Is that 29?
This is a 1850 New Weaver, owned by the Coonrod family of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, operated by Allison and Denise Brooks, restored by the Coonrod family. Or Dennis, I should say. Sorry, Denise.
1930 Caterpillar, Model 60, owned by Thomas Rowland of Danville, Iowa, and Thomas Rowland, the operator. 1963 John Deere 2010, owned by Dick Reynolds and operated by Dick Reynolds of Plattsburgh, Iowa.
The 1912 Case Steamroller, owned by the Coonrod family of Cedar Rapids, operated by Kenny Hansen.
'52 Caterpillar D2, owned by Charles Wilkinson from Selma, Iowa, and Austin Wilkinson is the operator. '58 Ford 901, owned and operated by Dustin Eberhardt of Delmer, Iowa.
The 1922 18-horse Universal Advanced Rumbler, owned by Dwayne Coonrod of Cedar Rapids, operated by Sean Siebold and Isaac Wasson.
1950 Farmall H, owned by T.S. Smith from Delmar, Iowa, and Bryce Everett and Tia is the operators.
A 1919 20-horsepower advanced rumbly universal owned by John Johnson of Springville, Iowa, operated by John Johnson, assisted by his lovely wife.
1944 John Deere B, owned by Stephen Hubble of Muscatine, Iowa. Morgan Grimm is the operator. 1935 John Deere Model B, owned by Matt Pearl from Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Jimmy Bride's the operator. 1929 John Deere D, owned by Matt Quell of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, operated by Shelby Bride.
1918 40-horsepower case owned by the Coonrod family of Cedar Rapids, operated by Andrew and Cole, restored by Coonrods.
1920 Titan 1020, owned by Joyce Harvey, boss from Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Barbara is the operator, with Joyce, Sandy, and Mark.
A 1914 2060 double simple Bar Scott, owned by Russell Lamp of Letts, Iowa, operated by Russell and Ken Tripp, restored by Russell and Jerry Lamp. I'm 88. I had a foreign exchange daughter who I just talked to her. She's supposed to be following us on Ustream. So if anybody knows anybody, they can get on the computer and watch us live.
1919 International Harvester Titan 1020, owned and operated by Darrell Brotherson of Tipton, Iowa.
Go ahead, DC.
1919 at 2175, A.D. Baker, owned by Scott Riley of Marion, Iowa, operated by John and Scott. They're pulling an Avery water wagon that Scott also restored.
1936 Farmall F12, right here in front, owned by Gene Brotherson from Tipton, Iowa, and Gene is the operator. 1926 Farmall Regular, owned and operated by Dustin Anderson of West Branch, Iowa.
Yep.
1941 Farmall H, owned by Nathan Fitz from Burlington, Iowa, and Nathan is the operator. 1947 John Deere A, owned and operated by David Fritz of Burlington, Iowa.
This is 1917 40-horsepower case owned by Ron, Joe, and Dave Galbraith. And operating it is Dave, grandsons Alex and Ethan. And also this is in memory of Dave's wife passing away of ALS this year. '48 John Deere Model D, owned by Michael Rowland Bueller from Winfield, Iowa, and Michael is the operator. A 1909 9-horse GI case, owned by Joe Galbraith of Sterling, Illinois, operated by the same. Alice Chalmers D17, owned by Bailey Doyle of Warsaw, Illinois. Rodney is the operator. 1928 case, 2545 model cross motor, owned by Dale and Ellen Taylor from Bloomfield, Iowa. Dale's the operator. 1916 Avery, owned by Jerry Weiss of DeWitt, Iowa, operated by Jerry Irwin and Karen Carg and Joyce. Well, they threw all these in one word. Karen Kerrigan, I think it is, Joyce and Bodecker, restored by Alan and Wade Smith. 1937 John Deere B, owned and operated by Joseph Sidar of Manuka, Illinois. This next John Deere 1010 is owned by Chuck Allen, the Allen Farms here at Mount Pleasant. Chuck's been letting his daughter drive around here, and she's doing a great job.
1946 Farmer B, owned by Dale Taylor of Bloomfield, Iowa. Operator Keith. Pulling McCormick Daring Spreader Model 100. Kind of missing your load there, aren't you?
$1941 Farm H, owned by Rich Taylor from Marion, Iowa, and Richard is the operator.
1902 Blue Giant, owned by Wayne Kennedy of Danville, Iowa, operated by Charlie Stark of Republic, Missouri, and Wayne.
1936 Ellis Chalmers, WC, owned and operated by Roger Graber of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
This here is a little car owned by the Midwest Old Thrashers here at Mount Pleasant, and Nate Taylor, Graver is the operator.
1929 Massey Harris Wallace, W2030, owned and operated by Kenneth McKinley of Morning Sun, Iowa.
A 1912 18 horsepower Avery, owned by Jay Siegelfuss of Iowa City, operated by Jay. Restored by Deard Stenmitz.
1950 M&M RTU, owned by Ron Royer from family from Morning Sun, Iowa, and Ron is the operator.
1947 Farmer B, owned by Lon Royer family of Morning Sun in Iowa. Kristen Henning is the operator.
211.
Don't have a number on 211, the Farm OEM.
1951.
1951.
Kevin Connolly.
Kevin Conley, right. The Morning Sun.
1942 Case SC, owned and operated by Deanna Connolly of Morning Sun, Iowa.
A 1923 Case 75 horsepower, owned by Midwest Old Thrashers, operated by Andy Retro and assisted by Jack Siddell. Andy made the flower pots on the east gate last year, the west gates this year, and he just finished the new doors on the saloon last night.
1939 John Deere Model B, owned by Larry and Shirley Bickford from Wapello, Iowa, and Larry Jr. is the operator.
1940 John Deere B, owned by Larry and Shirley Bickford of Wapello, Iowa. Larry is the operator.
A 1916 40 horsepower Case, owned by Roland Van Vark, Pella, Iowa, operated by Roland, restored by the Van Vark family.
1936 Alice Chalmers WC, owned by the Healthy family of Wayland, Iowa, and Karen Garrett is the operator.
1954 John Deere 60, owned and operated by Curtis and Kathy Helfrey, Winfield, Iowa.
This is a 50 horsepower Case, owned by Brian, Susan, and Linda Van Vark, a Pella, operated by Brian.
1936 John Deere Model A, owned by the Healthy family of Winfield, Iowa, and Healthy families are operating, so we don't know which one it is.
1935 John Deere B, owned and operated by Wendell Helfrey of Winfield, Iowa.
1917 16 double simple Reeves, owned by the J.P. Gallagher family of Piper City, Illinois, operated by Johnny and Courtney, and J.P.'s hanging on the back.
1937 John Deere Model B, owned by Darren Wilkinson from Morning Sun, Iowa, and Nick is the operator.
1935 John Deere D, owned by Larry Derbyshire of Yarmouth, Iowa. Jordan Steffener is the operator.
T30.
1913 20-horsepower return flew Avery, owned by Jeff and Charlie Ruth of Rogersville, Missouri, operated by Jeff and Emily Harvey.
1952 John Deere Model G, owned by Larry Derbyshire of Yarmouth, Iowa, and Larry's the operator.
1955 John Deere 70, owned and operated by Marlene Reed of New London, Iowa.
1886 12-horsepower case, owned by Tom Sater of Mount Pleasant, operated by Brian Warsaw of Donaldson, Iowa, and Ed Carter of Willard, Missouri. The seat on that where that good-looking girl is, that's where the driver used to sit. It used to be against the law to run those down the road by themselves. They had to have horses in front, so there's a couple of them with seats.
1955 John Deere Model 50, owned by Marlene Reed of New London, Iowa, and Marlene's the operator. I don't believe so.
1954 John Deere 60, owned and operated by Grant Loudsbury of New London, Iowa.
John Deere AR, owned by Joe Lansburg from New London, Iowa, and Joe's the operator.
A 1890 Giant, owned by Mike Parker of Libertyville, Iowa, operated by Mike and assisted by Rob Chain Drive Nelson.
No information on Little Farm OB.
What number you got here on the John Deere?
58 John Deere 420T.
58 420T, tricycle type.
A 1913 12-horsepower Russell, owned by Sharon Davis of Salem, Iowa, and Jerry Fricky of Winfield, Iowa, operated by Tracy Berry and Bill Perrineau. Restored by Bill and Brown White.
The L.
1929 Case L, owned and operated by Dean Graham Jr. of Charlotte, Iowa.
An 1885 6-horsepower nickel shepherd, owned by Sharon Davis, Salem, Iowa, operated by John Brewington and Tom Masters, restored by Craig Dobbins and John Brewington.
1944 Formo H, owned by Jeff Baker of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Jeff and Owen Baker is the operators.
1948 International Harvester Cab, owned and operated by Marvin Crable of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
$247. Well, hurry up. You're sitting there.
1959 Oliver 770, owned by Warren Beckman from Osceola, Iowa, and Warren is the operator.
A 1908 75-horsepower Montana Special Case, owned by Nick Foster, Jefferson, Iowa, operated by Mike Rody and Bob Stevens.
This next tractor is a feature tractor for 2014. It's owned by Dwight and Anna Copeland of Fairfield, Iowa. Kristen Gilliman from Pella, Iowa is the operator.
It's going to be a nice one.
A 1910 110-horsepower case, owned by Old Thrashers, operated by Eric Douglas. The engine's with the stars on the front of them. If you want to go for a ride on the engine, tell them you want to go for a ride. They'll take you.
1951 Case SC was the model, owned by Bill Nisley from Donaldson, Iowa, and Bill is the operator.
1946 Case BAC, owned and operated by Ben Pearson of Little York, Illinois.
Uh-oh.
This is a 1908 30 horsepower Colleen, owned by Larry Nelson, Muscatine, Iowa, operated by the Gator, restored by Larry Nelson and Gator.
1952 Farmall Super C, owned by Eric Lau of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Eric is the operator.
Getting pulled is a 1938 Oliver 70 on steel, owned and operated by Jacob Copeland of Fairfield, Iowa.
At least he's making it through the parade.
He's pushing that international.
Yeah, you're pushing that international, aren't you?
1954 Alabama WD-45, owned by Larry Wagner, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Larry is the operator.
This is a 1912 2575 Gar Scott, owned by Bo Nelson of Muscatine, operated by Marvin and Austin, restored by the Nelson family. First year here for this machine.
1948 ACG, owned by Leon McCurnlin of Martinsville, Illinois, and he is the operator.
1937 F-30, the International, owned by Gene Ehlers from Elwood, Iowa, and James the operator.
1941 Farmer Lamb, owned and operated by Mike Ellers of Scotch Grove, Iowa.
C, the B. 1944 Farmall B, owned by Jerry Ehlers from Grand Names, Iowa, and Gary is the operator.
A 1905 16 horsepower Russell, owned by the Jeff Ballard family in Little Rock, Illinois, operated by Jeff, restored by friends and family, and Jeff does all the announcing for the thrashing at the West End. He don't run out of words, I'll tell you that.
What number is it?
See what I said? He don't run out of words.
292, but I can't, 292?
1951 Farmer Lamb, owned and operated by Don Wickermish of Davenport, Iowa.
293.
1952 Farmall Super C, owned by Twyler Webster from Davenport, Iowa, and Tyler is the operator.
5/8 scale 65 case, owned by Ron and Carolyn Craigs of Kilbourne, Illinois, operated by Matt Becca and Michaela Hanley of West Branch.
1950 Ferguson TO-20, owned and operated by Ryan Davis of Mount Union, Iowa.
1937 Silver King R66 model, owned by Dick Lauer of Mount Union, Iowa, and Jacob Richards is the operators.
1894 13 horsepower Nickel Shepherd, owned by Aaron Bixler of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and is restored by Aaron.
1942 Silver King, model 42, owned by Dick Lauer of Mount Union, Iowa. Jeff Malone is the operator.
308 should be.
Yep.
1957 International 350, owned by Mike Gipple from New Sharon, Iowa, and Chris Gipple is the operator.
1938 Oliver 80 Road Crop, owned by Melvin Gipple of Crawfordsville, Iowa. Jim Christensen is the operator.
311.
1920 20 horsepower Advanced Rumbly, owned by the Deere family of Palmyra, Missouri, operated by Brad Riley Deere, restored by Brad and John.
1952 Oliver 66, owned by Marvin Gipple of Crawfordsville, Iowa, and Gary Cutler is the operator.
1936 MMKTA, owned and operated by Jim and Jerry Grohl of Stanwood, Iowa.
315.
...1947 International H, owned by David Van Fent from Mystic, Iowa. David is the operator.
A 1937 25 horsepower kitten owned by Michelle McClure of Colchester, Illinois, operated by Michelle, assisted by Sam, and never mind. Aaron Bixler on the rear.
1952 Ellis Chalmers WD, owned by Scott Roulette of Louisville, Iowa. Becky is the operator.
1942 Fomo H, owned by Todd Woodburn of Libertyville, Iowa, and Nate Woodburn is the operator.
Go ahead.
1959 AC WD-45, owned and operated by Kendall Roulette of Louisville, Iowa.
1914 20 horsepower Jumbo Harrison Jumbo, owned by Leroy McClure of Colchester, operated by Bob Jacoby.
...1936 John Deere Model A, owned by Roger Schaefer from Birmingham, Iowa, and Roger's the operator.
A 1910 30 horsepower Huber, owned by Leroy McClure of Colchester, operated by Kevin Hanley, assisted by Charlie Lane.
1935 Farmall F12, owned and operated by Gary Lee Morris of Montezuma, Iowa.
I didn't see you on there, Squeaky, I'm sorry. Squeaky's on the Huber.
1939 Farmo F20, owned by John and Don Butler from Marion, Iowa. John and Don are the operators.
$1949 Case SC, owned and operated by Kenneth Kopp of Danville, Iowa.
1961 Case 830 Wheatland, owned by Stephen Martin of Springville, Iowa. Stephen is the operator.
A 1957 Case 350, owned and operated by Karen Martin of Springfield, Iowa.
$351. 1951 SC, owned by Albert Martin of Springville, Iowa, and Albert is the operator.
1955 AC WD-45, owned by Paul Martin of Marion, Iowa. Jeff Barth is the operator.
1936 Ford, English Fordson, owned by Paul Martin of Marion, Iowa, and Paul's the operator.
1937 Oliver Harper 70, owned and operated by Roy and Sharon Bowers of Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
1926 20 horsepower Minneapolis, owned by Don Rhoda and Mary Schatz of Washington, Iowa, operated by Dan and Tim Reynolds of Mount Pleasant, and restored by Dan and Tim.
1939 Oliver 70, owned by the Berkey family of Madrid, Iowa. Chuck Berkey is the operator.
1958 John Deere 430W, owned by Alan and Lori Buckert of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Lori is the operator.
1957 John Deere 620, owned by the Buckert family of Hamilton, Illinois, and Danny Buckert Our second son is the operator.
1958 John Deere 420 high crop, owned by the Bucker Farms of Wausau, Illinois. Austin is the operator along with his grandmother Ruth.
1912 32-horse cross compound reeds owned by Old Thrashers, operated by Mike Borders and Lou Shoemaker with Larry Hand on the back.
This next little John Deere 320, just acquired that. It's owned by the Bucket family in Hamilton, Illinois, and driven by Keith Grimm of Charlotte, Iowa.
Yes. 1942 John Deere LI, owned by Ken Buckert of Hamilton, Illinois, and Jeremy is the operator.
60 horsepower case owned by Kenny Huffaker of Mount Pleasant, operated by Kenny and his, I guess, intended other or something, and Mike Stapp on the back.
1961 Massey Ferguson 65, owned by Gail Fisher of Benson, Iowa, and Gail is the operator.
No card on the next John Deere.
Okay. That there's the John Deere AR owned by Bucket family. And
A 1914 25 horsepower Minneapolis, owned by Mike Hall of Chatham, Illinois, and Matt Hall of Houghton, Iowa, operated by Mike and Matt.
390. 1945 John Deere Model B, owned by Chuck and Ann Pelley of Wheatland, Iowa, and Dana Pelley is the operator.
1946 Massey Harris 101 Jr., owned by Tim and Connie Pace of Muscatine, Iowa. Tim is the operator.
1931 Alice Chalmers UC Continental Motor, owned by Leon Ratchen from Wilton, Iowa, and Leon is the operator.
1947 Formula H, owned and operated by Darren Fisher of Creston, Iowa.
397.
This is a Gar Scott, year unknown because he didn't give me a card. It's owned by John and John III of Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and Darby's on the back.
This Massey Harris 30 here in front, owned by Herbert Lamack from Wilton, Iowa, and Tom Hurst is the operator.
1950 Massey Harris 44 Standard Diesel, owned and operated by Herbert Lamont of Wilton, Iowa.
1905 Kelly Springfield 12-ton roller, owned by June and Dave Gross of Centennial, Colorado, and the Herrick family of Mount Pleasant, operated by Russell Herrick and Dave Gross, and is restored by Huffy's Iron Works of Mount Pleasant.
1952 Massey Harris 44, owned by Twyla Lamack of Wilton, Iowa, and Twyla is the operator, got the 3-bottom plow.
1953 Massey Harris 55 LP, owned by Howard Dobbins of Durant, Iowa, and Howard is the operator.
1946 Massey Harris 102, owned by Glenda Dobbins of Durant, Iowa, and Glenda is the operator.
1934 John Deere GP, owned and operated by Ken Burton of New London, Iowa.
1957 Oliver Super 77, owned by Randy Coleman from Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Randy's the operator.
1917 22 horsepower Woods Brothers, owned by Tooney Melcher, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, operated by Clint Welch, assisted by Pub and Sarah.
A 1960 Minneapolis Moline M5 diesel, owned by Robert Denning of Noel and Noel Rowe, New London, Iowa. Ronald is the operator.
1941 Oliver 70, owned by Walter Mullins from Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Walter's the operator.
In 1952 Oliver 77, owned and operated by Walter Mullen of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
They're both been driving. 416.
1937 Alice Chalmer WC, owned by Darrell Steinberger from Newton, Iowa, and Darrell is the operator.
A 1916 2070 Nicholas Shepherd, owned by Old Thrashers, operated by Dale Fuller.
We have no information on this little ACB. Maybe I can read it when he goes by. Howard and Nancy Wertzman, it's a model 1946.
'1950 John Deere Model A, owned by Mary Griffiths from Libertyville, Iowa, and Mary is the operator.
Next one is a John Deere G and no card on it.
Ed Segerman. Ed Segerman.
Ed Segerman.
How about that? We double teamed you.
22 horsepower Wood Brothers, owned by Anna Frank and Annie Tharp of Albi, Iowa, operated by Frank.
1956 John Deere 420, owned by Ed and Charlene Segerman, Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Ed and Charlene's the operators.
1941 Formula H, owned by Ed and Charlene Segerman of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Ed is the operator, pulling a McCormick Deering wagon.
438, you're out.
25 horsepower Russell, owned by John Gallows, operated by Whiting.
438, we've got no card, but it's from Oliver 66 of these.
Next is a Farmer Lamb. Marvin Johnson, I believe, is on the... Johansson, I'm sorry. Marvin Johansson of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Lawrence Haynes is the operator.
1917, 1965 horsepower, Fort Huron, owned by Rob Nelson, Richard Barnes, Lockridge, Iowa, operated by Jacob.
'53 Alice Chalmer VAC here in front, owned by Roger Ross from Washington. Keith. Okay, from Washington, Iowa, and Roger's the operator.
1940 John Deere L, owned and operated by Carl Wickham of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
1952 Alice Chalmer WD, owned by Robert Swigert from Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Robert Swigert is the operator with the Sweet 16 candidate on.
A 1920, 20 horsepower Minneapolis, owned by Kenton Sutton of Seward, Nebraska, operated by Kenton.
1953 Alice Chalmers WD-45, owned and operated by Earl Swigert of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and it's her 54th wedding anniversary.
1936 Alice Chalmer WC, owned by Kevin Clark from Wayland, Iowa, and Dan Mott is the operator.
1948 Ford 8N, owned by Armandine Beauchart of Wayland, Iowa.
Good friend, Norman Bouchard.
With a 5/8 scale Wood Brothers, built in 2009, I believe. Built by Tom Nichols of Eldon, Iowa, and John Shepard of Bloomfield, operated by Tom.
1934 Alice Chalmers WC, owned by Robert Cable from Uniontown, Ohio, and Robert is the operator.
1936 John Deere A, owned and operated by Dustin Yates of Waterloo, Iowa.
A 1912 20 horsepower Wood Brothers owned by Mel and Judy Court of Macomb, Illinois, operated by Matt Durkee of Cedar Rapids.
1931 John Deere Model D, owned by George Janacek of Washington, Iowa, and George is the operator. Good to see you.
$514.
1959 John Deere 630, owned and operated by Dean Wilson of Washington, Iowa.
1941 Farmville A, owned by Charles Singman from Wellman, Iowa, and Pamela is the operator. I don't think that's Pamela.
1919 20 horsepower Advance owned by Penny and Bob Gilchrist of Whittier, Iowa. This engine just arrived here from Texas about 3 weeks ago, so it didn't look that good.
1946 Farmel C, owned and operated by Maurice Pasha of Washington, Iowa.
525.
1948 Ford A-10, owned by William Gunther from Washington, Iowa, and Carolyn is the operator.
1914 18 horsepower Woods Brothers, Penny, Bob Gilchrist of Whittier, Iowa, the owners, operated by Bob and assisted by Choo Choo.
1944 John Deere B, owned and operated by William Gunther of Washington, Iowa.
1935 Alice Chalmers WC, owned by Jerry Graver of Washington, Iowa, and Jerry's the operator.
530.
1957 Minneapolis Moline 335, owned and operated by Wendell Schallenberg of Pleasant Hill, Iowa.
A 1914 40 horsepower short boiler case owned by Penny and Bob Gilchrist of Whittier, Iowa.
535.
1946 Farmville C, owned by Darrell Weingard from Drakesville, Iowa, and Audrey is the operator.
1909 75 horsepower case owned by the Gertis family of Burlington, Iowa, operated by John Gertis, Jeff Johnson.
1953 Farmel Super W6, owned and operated by David Wigan of Drakesville, Iowa.
1936 Farmville F20, owned by Scott and Larry Wellman from Axworth, Iowa, and Scott is the operator.
1930 Farmel Regular, owned and operated by Dan Boozer of Pella, Iowa.
A 1910 16 horsepower Gar Scott owned by Nelson Smith of Brighton, Iowa, operated by Darrell Meeks of Waynesville, Ohio.
1952 M Super IH Super A, owned by Lynn Douglas of Edina, Missouri. It's got a mower with it, a little belly mower.
1958 International Harvester 650D, owned and operated by Matt Gilland of Albia, Iowa.
1882 Harrison, owned by Steve Kuntz of Valley Park, Missouri, operated by Steve and restored by Lewis, and it was found in the Missouri River on an island after the 60 floods It came to life and they dug it out and drug it home, and there it is.
545, we don't have a card on you.
450 International.
With the 450 International, where you from? Albia. Good place to buy cattle over there at Albia, it used to be anyway.
This next tractor, no card on it, it's a John Deere B, it's a 1950. Mark and Lisa Shepherd, Albia, Iowa.
By 47.
46. 1954 John Deere 70 diesel, owned by Daniel Walker of Albia, Iowa, and Daniel's the operator.
This road locomotive is the nickel shepherd boiler with a Williams two-cylinder simple underneath on a Mack truck chassis. It was built in the 50s by Warren Coonrod of Cedar Rapids, operated by Lester Butterfield, restored by the Coonrod family, and the Calliope was built in Muscatine, Iowa. It's a family, built in 1929.
1939 John Deere H, owned and operated by Anthony Gilland of Albia, Iowa.
1951 John Deere Model B, owned by Blake Smith of Sperry, Iowa, and Blake's the operator.
1948 John Deere M, owned and operated by Brian Smith of Fort Madison, Iowa.
64.
1951 Matthew Harris 44 here in front, and owned by Dean Van Ness from Danville, Iowa, and Dean is the operator.
1953 Alice Chalmers WD 45, owned and operated by Gerald Martin of New London, Iowa.
568.
1953 Matthew Harris 44, owned by Edward Smith of Salem, Iowa, and Edward is the operator.
1934 Matthew Harris 1220, owned and operated by Daniel Peterson of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
1935 Alabama WC, owned by Danny Peterson of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, operated by Danny Peterson. Nice fellow here on this side, got a nice straw hat on.
1935 Alice Chalmers U, owned by Daniel Peterson of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
1928 Wallace 2030, owned by Danny Peterson of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Danny's the driver.
1955 Matthew Harris 33, owned by Clayton Loving of New London, Iowa. Robbie Rich is the operator.
1941 Matthew Harris 81, owned by Hallie Loving from New London, Iowa, and Dylan Wilkins is the operator.
1947 Matthew Harris 44-6, owned by Dave Loving of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Haley Loving is the operator.
1951 Matthew Harris 44, and owned by Dave Loving, Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Dave is the operator.
1947 Matthew Harris 55, owned by Jason Loving, operated by Jason, New London, Iowa.
1954 Matthew Harris 44 Special, owned by Jason Loving of New London, Iowa, and Jason is the operator.
1926 Case 1220 Cross Motor, owned by David Van Sant
590.
of Harvey, Iowa.
1945 John Deere BR, owned by Ron Van Sant of Oskaloosa, Iowa, and Ron is the operator.
Go ahead and get to 594.
1947 John Deere GM, owned by David Dixon from Toledo, Illinois, and David is the operator.
1948 Ferguson TO 20. Alan Lucas is Washington, Iowa is the operator.
1957 Formal Cab, owned by Bernie Loft of Hardin, Iowa, or Illinois. Bernie is the operator.
1948 Ferguson TO 20. Alan Lucas, Washington, Iowa. Ron Lucas, operator.
1941 Ford 9N, owned by Richard Bloomquist from Fairfield, Iowa, and Richard the operator.
No card on the Massey Ferguson 50.
1951 John Deere Model B, owned by Don and Steve Becker from Fairfield, Iowa, and Don is the operator.
1939 John Deere B, owned by Steve Beagle of Fairfield, Iowa. Steve is the operator.
1954 Farmall Super MTA, owned by Aaron Sheets, and Aaron Sheets is Stockport, Iowa, and he's the driver.
1957 John Deere 520, owned and operated by J.D. Deers of Brighton, Iowa.
John Deere 720, owned by Jason Hellwick from Fairfield, and Jason operator.
1956 John Deere 70 diesel, owned and operated by Mike Hellwig of Fairfield, Iowa.
1958 John Deere 820, owned by Mike Weig from Fairfield, Iowa, and Mike is the operator.
1941 John Deere A, owned and operated by Maynard Hanson of Ryota, Iowa.
1941 John Deere A, owned by Jerry Janschek from Defiance, Missouri, and Jerry's the operator.
638.
No.
636 over there.
636. 1939 John Deere B, operated by Lloyd Bank of Salem, Iowa.
1941 M&M RTU, owned by Bob Booth from Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Bob is the operator.
1951 Farmer Lamb, owned and operated by Jeff and Jerry Quile of Fairfield, Iowa.
1950 Oliver 77, owned by Floyd Schaefer from Fairfield, Iowa, and Floyd is the operator.
1948 ACWC, owned by Ron Bauer of Fairfield, Iowa. Aaron Hildebrand is the operator.
1934 Allenstown WC, owned by Ron Bauer of Fairfield, Iowa, and Ron is the operator.
1957 John Deere 620, owned by Ron Bauer of Fairfield. Jeanette Bauer is the operator.
1959 John Deere 620, owned by Walter Church from Salem, Iowa, and Walter is the operator.
1952 John Deere A, owned by Walt Church of Salem, Iowa. Kenton Church is the operator.
1928 Hart Par 1836, owned by Midwest Old Thrashers, West Burlington. Ron Wright is the operator.
1951 Oliver 66, owned and operated by George Zinzer of Solon, Iowa.
1944 John Deere Model B, owned by John Green, Burlington, Iowa, and John is the operator.
1958 John Deere 520, owned and operated by Jim Michael of Roanoke, Wisconsin.
1939 John Deere Model A, owned by Larry Michaels from West Branch, Iowa, and Larry is the operator.
1956 John Deere 60, owned and operated by Jerry Michael of West Branch, Iowa.
1949 Alice Chalmers Model C, owned by Sean Michaels from Norway, Iowa, and Sean is the operator.
1954 AC WD 45, owned and operated by Susan Morgan of Lone Tree, Iowa.
72.
What's your number? 671.
1955, Alice Chalmers, WD 45, owned by Mike Busser, Mount Vernon, Iowa, and Mike is the operator.
1958 ACCA, owned and operated by Brian Bizier of Nichols, Iowa.
75.
1958 Farm Oil 560, owned by Dan Busser of Lone Tree, Iowa, and Dan is the operator.
1957 Farmer Cub Little Boy, owned and operated by Robert Busser of Nichols, Iowa.
1951 Farm Oil MD, owned by Charles and Bill McConder from Cascade, Iowa, and Charles is the operator.
93.
Pulling that one. 689 is pulling that one.
1927 McCormick Dairy 1020, owned by Nancy McConder from Cascade, Iowa, is being pulled by 1951 Farmer MT, owned by Bill McConder.
No card on the Farm Oil animal.
1942 Farm Oil H, owned by Philip Newquist from Agency, Iowa, and Philip is the operator.
1941 John Deere H, owned and operated by Mike Vanderlinden of Knoxville, Iowa.
John Deere A, Paul McNeely is the operator.
No card on the next one, and I believe it's a 1937B.
Massey Harris.
Rich McNeely is on Massey here, right?
1958 Alice Chalmers D17, owned by Brian and Ron Tagler of Fairfield, Iowa. Whitney is the operator.
Don't have one on the 710, Alice Chalmers G.
Don't have one on the 710. Alice Chalmers G, little Alice Chalmers garden tractor there, one bottom plow on it.
1958 Alice Chalmers B, owned by Brian Tagler of Fairfield. Courtney is the operator.
1962 John Deere 2010, owned by Larry Swan from Fairfield, Iowa, and Brandon Tagliger is the operator.
I have no card on the John Deere 40.
736.
1935 McCormick Dairy 012, owned by Jack Stewart Sr. of Wellman, Iowa, and Jody Stewart is the operator.
1935 McCormick Dairy 012 Orchard, owned and operated by Jim Seward of Wellman, Iowa.
1951 John Deere A, don't have a card on it. Virgil Goodrich.
Gingrich. No card on the next one. I believe it's a 1951 R. Virgil Gingrich of West Branch, Iowa. Is that right? Boy, my eyes are pretty good today, aren't they?
You got good eyes, haven't you? 1946 Farm Oil 8, owned by Harris Van Ness from Tracy, Iowa, and Scott is the operator.
1943 John Deere B, owned by Tim and Caitlin Denning of Sheffield, Illinois. Caitlin is the operator.
1938 Alice Chalmers WC, owned by Dolores Wilson, Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Riggs Wilson, great-grandson, is riding.
1950 John Deere B, owned and operated by Matthew Dean of Burlington, Iowa.
781 is your next.
786.
1951 John Deere A, owned by Matthew Dean of Burlington, Iowa, and Matthew's the operator.
1956 Ferguson F40, owned and operated by Willis Biddle of Fairfield, Iowa.
1960 Ford 641 diesel, owned by Janabel Mulligan from Packwood, Iowa, and she's also the operator.
1950 Farmall H, owned and operated by Gary Sparks of Fairfield, Iowa.
1949 John Deere, owned by James Reading from Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and James is the operator.
1958 John Deere 320, owned and operated by Philip Graber of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
1949 Farmall M, owned by John Morgan of Basco, Illinois. John done the far side over there.
1938 McCormick Line W30, owned and operated by John Morrison of Basco, Illinois.
1943 John Deere Model B, owned by Tom Busser of Black, Iowa, and Tom is the operator.
1948 John Deere A, owned and operated by Hillary Landman of Fremont, Iowa.
1940 John Deere Model B, owned by Matthew Landman from Ottumwa, Iowa, and Matthew is the operator.
1939 Sears and Roebuck Economy, owned and operated by John Baum of Appleton, Wisconsin.
1962 Panzer Long Tractor here now, owned by Harold Simmons of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and operated by Harold.
That 883? 865 here.
1960 Science and Mechanics Power and Pup, owned and operated by Donald Luke of Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
1965 Cub Cadet right here in front, owned by Matthew Tagliar from Fairfield, Iowa, and Matt is the operator.
I have no card on the little Dynamark there. 1969 Sears Hydrotrack 12, owned and operated by Robert Kessel of Fairfield, Iowa.
1988 Alice Chalmer, owned by Will Calhoun from Mount Pleasant, Iowa, the Model 611. Will is the operator.
1967 John Deere 110, owned and operated by Nathan Howard of Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
908. 904. 1971 Case 220, Tyler and Iden Clemens from Clarence, Iowa. Tyler is the operator. 1968
Simplicity Landlord, operated by Jason Sager.
Go ahead.
Burlington, Iowa.
892 is Ethan Graber from Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Harold Simons, the owner.
1973 John Deere 140, owned and operated by Dan Barnhart of Washington, Iowa.
Oh, Austin. There's Austin Bucket right down here with the little John Deere 110 patio, owned and operated by Austin Bucket from Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
No card on the Cub Cadet. 1952 IH Super, that's not it, 86.
1967 Montgomery Ward. Model Mark Squire 10, Eddie Ward from Bates City, Missouri, is the operator. Brand new mower right there. He just took it out of the box, I think, last week, right, Eddie?
1968 Massey Ferguson 10, owned and operated by Alex Peterson, Mount Pleasant, Iowa. 1968 Ford 120, owned and operated by Clayton Jennings, Hamilton, Illinois.
Massey Ferguson 12-horse lawnmower owned by Mark Ryder, Chilcock, Iowa, and operated by Mark Ryder. One of the best mechanics on them yet.
1967 Case 190 lawn tractor owned by Austin Bucket of Mount Pleasant, Iowa. Jeremy is the operator. That concludes our parade today, and I want to thank Mr. Fred Bucker here and Alan Bucker, my wife Anna.
I'd like to thank you and your wife Anna for helping here, and she's kind of got the brains to the for the both of us. And we want to thank you. I don't know how many we've run through. Right now we've got 945 as our numbers, so we know we've got roughly that many numbers out. So you see, it's kind of a hectic thing trying to draw. To my left here, I've got my son, Alan Burgett, which is a director here in the tractor area at Mount Pleasant, has been for several years. Anything you want to say, Alan?
Well, we want to welcome you here at Old Threshers. There's a lot of things to see. We've got a concert coming on tonight, so we encourage you to stick around. If you walk around and have any questions, be sure to stop and ask the volunteers here. They'd be glad to answer any questions you have. But again, it's a hot day out, but there's water stations throughout the grounds. Again, we encourage you to take in all the shows tonight, and just a lot of things to do, a lot of great places to eat. So enjoy your day here at Midwest Old Threshers.